The number of U.S. children diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, has grown 22% since 2003. Earlier this month, the Centers for Disease Control reported 1 in 10 children now have ADHD, an increase of 1 million since 2003. The spike in diagnoses of ADHD and other mental disorders has fueled an unprecedented reliance on pharmaceutical medications to treat children with long-term effects that remain unknown. The conventional response has also emphasized coercive methods, with parents and schools encouraged to focus on regulating children's behavior. Well, the Canadian physician and best-selling author, Dr. Gabor argues these responses are treating surface symptoms as causes while ignoring deeper roots. Whether it's in mental disorders like ADHD or in rampant incidents of bullying, Dr. Mate says children are in fact reacting to the broader collapse of the nurturing conditions needed for their healthy development. Instead of focusing on regulating children's behavior, Dr. Mate argues we should look at how those nurturing conditions can be improved. Dr. Gabor Mate is the author of 4 books, including Scattered, How Attention Deficit Disorder Originates and What You Can Do About It. And with Dr. Gordon Neufeld, Hold On to Your Kids, Why Parents Need to Matter More Than Peers. Earlier this year, he appeared on Democracy Now! To discuss his work on drug addiction, as well as on the mind-body connection, the role of emotions and stresses in the development of chronic illnesses. Well, Dr. Mate recently returned to our studio to talk about ADHD, parenting, bullying, the education system, and how a litany of stresses on the family environment is impacting American children.
In the United States right now, there are 3 million children receiving stimulant medications for ADHD.
ADHD means?
Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And there are about 500,000 kids in this country receiving heavy-duty antipsychotic medications. Medications such as are usually given to adult schizophrenics to regulate their hallucinations. But in this case, children are getting it to control their behaviors. So what we have is a massive social experiment of the chemical control of children's behavior, with no idea of the long-term consequences of these heavy-duty antipsychotics on kids. And I know that Canadian statistics just last week showed that within the last 5 years, there's been a 43% increase in the rate of dispensing of stimulant prescriptions for ADD, or ADHD. And most of these are going to boys. In other words, what we're seeing is an unprecedented burgeoning of the diagnosis. And I should say, really, I'm talking about, more broadly speaking, what I would call the destruction of American childhood, because ADD is just a template, or it's just an example of what's going on. In fact, according to a recent study published in the States, nearly half of American adolescents now meet some criteria for mental health disorders. So we're talking about a massive impact on our children of something in our culture that's just not being recognized.
Explain exactly what attention deficit disorder is, what attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is.
Well, specifically ADD is a compound of three category called set of symptoms. One has to do with poor impulse control. So these children have difficulty controlling their impulses. When their brain tells them to do something from the lower brain centers, there's nothing up here in the cortex, which is where the executive functions are, which is where the functions are that are supposed to tell us what to do and what not to do. Those circuits just don't work. So there's poor impulse control. They act out, they behave aggressively, they speak out of turn, they say the wrong thing. Adults with ADD will shop compulsively, or impulsively, I should say, and again behave in impulsive fashion. So poor impulse control. But again, please notice that the impulse control problem is general amongst kids these days. In other words, it's not just the kids diagnosed with ADD, but a lot of kids. And there's a whole lot of new diagnoses now. And children are being diagnosed with all kinds of things. ADD is just one example. There's a new diagnosis called oppositional defiant disorder, which again has to do with behaviors and poor impulse control. So that impulse control now has become a problem amongst children in general, not just the specific ones diagnosed with ADD. The second criteria for ADD is physical hyperactivity. So the part of the brain, again, that's supposed to regulate physical activity and keep you still, just again doesn't work. And then finally, in the third criteria, is poor attention skills. Tuning out, not paying attention, mind being somewhere else, absent-mindedness, not being able to focus, beginning to work on something, 5 minutes later the mind goes somewhere else. So kind of a mental restlessness and a lack of being still, lack of being focused, lack of being present. These are the 3 major criteria of ADD.